Assalamu alaikum and very warm welcome with another episode of Diplomatic Enclave. And I am your host Malik Manzur. It's a great honor for me that today I am joined by His Excellency, the Ambassador of Philippines, His Excellency Daniel Ramos Espiritu. I warmly welcome you, sir, in my program.
Thank you.
And we were, as you know, that we have a very cordial brotherly relation with the Philippines. And as Ambassador, he is trying to promote these bilateral relations when he assumed the charge. So, Excellency, first of all, I warmly welcome to you in my program.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
And first of all, I will start by asking that you are a career diplomat, and how do you find as ambassador in Pakistan, as you have met several peoples and the culture and the sites in Pakistan, and also you will briefly tell us about your career, then in which country you have served as an ambassador, as a diplomat.
Thank you very much, Mr. Malik Manzur Ahmed. Thank you for this grand opportunity to have an interview with Channel 5. And let me also greet in this vein the viewers of Channel 5, and also to thank the Kabrin, the group of newspapers, for this grand opportunity of interacting with the Pakistani people.
You're welcome, sir.
Now, let me start probably with my career. As you said, I'm a career diplomat. I've been in the Foreign Service for 21 years. Yeah, I entered the Foreign Service in 1994, during which I first became the Special Assistant to the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of the Philippines. And then after that, I was assigned to Seoul, the Republic of Korea, for 6 years, where I was third and then second secretary, and then also vice consul and consul. And then after that, I was assigned as back at the Home Office as the Special Assistant of the Vice Minister for International Economic Relations, handling specifically the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation, the 21-country economic cooperation grouping in the Asia-Pacific. Now, I held that position for almost 2 years, from 2004 to 2005. And from 2006 to 2007, I was also appointed the director of our China and North Asia division, of course, handling all our bilateral affairs with China. And then in 2007, I was assigned for 6 years in Los Angeles, California, as the Deputy Consul General of the Consulate General there. It was a very busy post. The United States, especially Southwestern California, which we cover from California to Texas, comprise the states of the U.S. with which we have the largest trade, and there are also more than 1 million Filipinos there. Then I came back to the Philippines in 2013, during which I was appointed the director of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations Political Security Community.
Exactly.
And I was appointed here. I assumed my position here in Pakistan at the end of August last year, but I was able to present my credentials in November 2015. Now, let me tell you that just like most of the diplomats here, my first impression of Pakistan was formed by the mass media. And oh my God, it was a terrible, terrible, terrible image. It's like as if Pakistan was like Syria or Libya.
Oh, yes.
But you know, the good thing about it is that the direct experience I had here, the moment I landed in Pakistan, I saw that the reality was far, far different. Of course, you have security problems, but it's not as bad as that. And so I'm actually enjoying it here.
As portrayed in the media,
As portrayed in the media, yeah. The media portrayal is too much. Now that we're here in Pakistan, we see that we can live pretty much normal lives here. And actually, more than live pretty much normal lives, enjoy our lives here in Pakistan. This is a country of diverse people and culture, and very friendly and hospitable people, just like here, Mr. Malik.
Yes.
And so in my several months of stay here, I've already developed several friendships. And I could say that I'm indeed enjoying the place so much. But of course, in spite of the fact that we had these impressions from the mass media, I also cannot forget the fact that in my younger days, and also in my studies of world culture, I've always had this impression of Pakistan as some kind of a land of fables. Yeah, a land of wonderful and colorful culture.
Yes.
You know, I'm an admirer of Mughal art and architecture, the miniature paintings, and I think you have wonderful specimens of those things here in Pakistan. In the few months I've been here, I've been to so many places already. I've been to Lahore for several times, your cultural center. I've seen your Red Fort, your Shalimar Garden. Oh, wonderful. I've been to Karachi. I've seen Mohata Palace. I've been to Karachi several times, and I've been also to Muri. I've been to Taxila, and I'm looking forward to seeing Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa also. And even more after that, probably a visit to Gilgit, the wonders of Gilgit and Skardu. But coming here on with the right foot forward, and I can only see optimism in my years ahead.
Excellency, in very detail you brief us and our audience before Pakistan and your arrival and your interaction with the peoples. How would you define Pakistan-Philippines bilateral relations? And do you satisfy with the level of current bilateral relation?
The Philippines and Pakistan are at the opposite corners of Asia. We are in the easternmost part of the Asia Pacific, and you are here in the westernmost part of South Asia. But in spite of the distance, you wouldn't believe it, our bilateral relations is quite dynamic. Now we can start with the fact that actually every year around 3,500 to 3,700 Pakistanis go to the Philippines for tourism and other purposes. At the same time, we have 1,500 Filipinos residing in Pakistan in different capacities as professionals, as workers, and not to mention the ones who are coming in as tourists. So there, in people exchange alone, the relations between the two countries is already dynamic. But when it comes to trade also, the bilateral trade between Pakistan and the Philippines is to the tune of $120 million. So that's nothing to sneeze at in spite of the distance, right? The Philippines primarily import from Pakistan light petroleum, pharmaceuticals, including medicaments, some fruits, and also a lot of cotton and textiles. Yeah, and at the same time, the Philippines export to Pakistan a lot of auto parts, auto components, auto accessories, materials for the assemblies of cars, electrical parts, machine parts. We are also exporting pineapples. We are also exporting a lot of other light industrial products to your country. Now that provides for a good start of economic exchange between our peoples. Now, while the investment of Pakistan in the Philippines is quite light, it's a bit just around $1 million. The Philippines actually has a large stake and investment in Pakistan. Actually, in the port of Karachi alone, in the Pakistani terminal container port, a Philippine company, a Philippine terminal corporation called the International Container Terminal Services Incorporated has, I think, around 64% of stake in the Pakistani port terminal in Karachi. So that's huge. And at the same time, there are also other investments in Pakistan. But, you know, in spite of this, we believe that we still have a lot of room for improvement. Actually, in terms of trade, I'm looking at further trade in auto parts and machine parts, and even in fruits, processed food, yeah, things like that. And at the same time, we're interested in investment in Pakistan, not only in the expansion of port development and port management, but also in power generation. I know very well that you have some problems these days with power generation. Yes. Yeah, you know, the Philippines has been through the same experience in the 1990s, in the early 90s. There used to be a time when the Philippines used to suffer 4 to 12 hours of brownout every day. And it's wreaking havoc on our industries, and it was deterring investments. But during the time of one of our presidents, President Fidel V. Ramos, we were able to address that one, especially through the encouragement of independent power producers. And I think we can help Pakistan in this regard, not only in terms of how to do it, but also in terms of recommending companies who can do it. One particularly big Philippine company who is very much into it is the Aboitiz Power Corporation. They are among the largest generators of power in the Philippines. And they can help Pakistan in terms not only of power generation from oil and coal, but also from renewable energy. And they're very much also into hydroelectric power. But I think for us, and for the specific characteristics of the geography of Pakistan, I think we can explore and maximize the potentials of your rivers and rivulets and streams in terms of what they call off-the-river kind of power generation. You know, via creation of small artificial dams. So they are small, so they are not so investment intensive. It simply entails the production, or rather the construction of conveyance pipes from rivers. We don't change the river, we just divert some of a minute part of the water that comes from your active rivers into pipes, conveyance pipes, connect it into small dams or weirs and to power stations, and then you can generate power from that. These are small ones.
It's a good formula, you know.
Very good formula, and very good for developing countries like ours, which are not capital, we don't have so much capital. And you know, the moment these kind of small generating plants are made, they could be actually managed by the people themselves.
Yes.
In the local.
So as you mentioned that trade volume is very low, and you are not satisfied with the existing trade
We are not satisfied with the trade volume.
So how both countries can actually enhance the trade volume? And my second part of the question, that is there any possibility to have a free trade agreement between the two countries?
Well, the Philippines is always open to free trade, of course, but it takes two to tango. Pakistan should also be ready for free trade, and for the two sides to agree on most of the terms. Yeah, so why not? That would be good. But you know, one particular characteristic or feature that I observed between our bilateral trade is that they're not regular trade. You know, these are not regular orders. They're just one-off kind of orders, and yet in spite of that, we're able to generate 100 million a year, and that's quite big. If we could make those orders regular, then I think bilateral trade will increase. And we're also looking at niche markets in Pakistan. For example, in spite of the fact that you're already producing some of, you know, the economies of Pakistan and the Philippines are quite the same, are quite similar. But they are niche markets, some areas where we can cooperate with each other. In spite of the fact that our industries are similar, somewhere along the logistics lines, you know, the different inputs of production, there are areas where you may have shortages, or we may have shortages, and then our two countries could make exchanges to fill up the gaps in our logistic chain.
Exactly.
So that's quite huge, and I think that will be a good area from which to start an expansion of mutual trade.
And sir, as a master, how do you describe the current political, diplomatic, economic and trade and cultural relation between the two countries?
Well, suffice it to say that we have an annual consultation. It's quite brisk. Yeah, it's quite brisk in spite of the fact that we belong to two different subcontinents of Asia. You know, the strongest relations, it's natural for countries that their strongest relations are with the countries right next to them. So in that case, for us, it's Southeast Asia. In your case, it's South Asia. And then, of course, it's also natural that we have these very dynamic relations with the powers around us. United States, China, Japan, the European Union, South Korea.
Yes.
But in spite of this, there's still areas for good cooperation between our smaller economies. And I think this is doing well between our two countries.
And people-to-people contact at high-level delegation as well.
Yes, of course, yes. Suffice it to say that I think the best testament to our good relations would be the fact that there are quite a substantial number of intermarriages between our two countries.
And sir, how do you describe the role of Pakistan regarding durable peace and stability in this region? And Pakistan is a very important country of this region.
Yes.
But as ambassador of your country, how do you see the role being played by the Pakistani authorities to bring a durable peace in this region?
It is very, very important. The role of Pakistan is very, very important. First of all, you have the situation in South Asia. You know, the Asia Pacific cannot be called a peaceful region if we cannot preserve the peace in South Asia. So we are watching with great interest and concern your interactions with India and also your interaction with Afghanistan.
Yes, yes.
And we appreciate all the efforts that you are making towards the peaceful settlement of disputes and the conduct of dialogues with the parties here. But you know, actually the significance of Pakistan is even becoming bigger because of the issue of terrorism. So whatever happens in Pakistan does not remain in Pakistan. In the same way that whatever happens in the Middle East does not remain in the Middle East, but also affects South Asia and the rest of Asia. Now we have ISIS. We have all the other militant groups rampaging all over the region. And so it's very important that we have this close cooperation among all the countries in the region. And I think we are having that. We have a lot of organizations, networks, cooperation agreements in this regard, not only bilaterally but multilaterally. And I think this is very important for us to maintain the conducive environment for economic development. And in this vein, let me tell you that we very much appreciate the campaign being waged by Pakistan against terrorist groups within its area of jurisdiction. It's a big help.
As sir, in your initial remarks, you told a very true story. That in media you heard that it is a very bloodshed, a very dangerous country.
Of course, yes.
But your opinion is rapidly changed when you assume as ambassador in capital here in Islamabad. Do you see that Pakistan counter-terrorism strategy is very successful and acknowledged by the whole world and international community? Do you think that this operation ongoing against the counter-terrorism will be very successful and Pakistan will be able to eradicate this menace of terrorism?
I think it's very clear that you are making much headway. And this thing is very much recognized. Not only us, we recognize that, but it's also being recognized by the powers, by China, United States, European Union. All these things are happening, and we are seeing success on your part in this regard. But we also acknowledge that there's still much that we have to do. Well, we cannot deny that there's still these explosions happening in Lahore, in Peshawar, in other parts of the country. In the same way that explosions are happening around the world.
Around the globe.
Yeah, it's not just a Pakistani thing. It's a global thing now, even in my country.
Because it's a global issue and needs to be global solution, I think.
So because of that, we appreciate each and every contribution to this. And the contribution of Pakistan is crucial. And whatever you do here also affects us in the Philippines, in our own fight against terrorism. Because, the networks are no longer local. They're global networks.
Yes, of course.
Like you're now here and in Afghanistan, very much concerned about the influence of ISIS. We are too, in our own country. And the only thing that we can do in the face of such a common threat is to help each other, to have a common effort among ourselves.
Exactly. And sir, how do you see the Pakistan's efforts regarding reconciliation efforts in Pakistan going on? And with the effort of Pakistan, 4 countries group have been constituted to pave the way between the talks Afghan and the Taliban. But how do you see these reconciliation efforts will be successful in Afghanistan?
As I said before, in international politics, it takes at least 2 to tango. Now there in Afghanistan, you have so many players. It will depend on how far each and every player will be willing to cooperate within the grouping. And it's also important that the major players are involved because, the primary spoilers in any peace talks or peace negotiations would be breakaway groups or groups which are not included in the talks. It's very important that, first of all, that each country talks with or speaks with just one voice. That's important, but it's also important that all the major players are included. Otherwise, if 1 or 2 players are not included, then they can destroy the whole thing. I mean, that is the lesson of especially the Israeli-Palestinian talks. You have so many groups. That's also the lesson of our own peace talks in the Philippines, in southern Philippines, in Mindanao. The main groups may be talking to each other, and they may be making some headway, but some breakaway groups could always spoil whatever is being arranged on the table.
Sir, as we know that your country is a very important member of ASEAN Forum. So can you briefly tell us the role of your country to making more effective this body, ASEAN countries in that region?
Well, okay. In that vein, let me announce that by 2017, the Philippines will be the chair of ASEAN. And so we will be hosting the ASEAN meetings and the ASEAN summits. There was a milestone that happened at the end of last year. It was a quiet milestone, but it was a milestone nevertheless. On December 30, 2015, ASEAN became a community. a political security community, and an economic community, and a socio-cultural community. So, it includes 10 countries in Southeast Asia, all of which are very dynamic economies. They're among the fastest growing economies in the region. And so I think the formation of this ASEAN community will be a precursor of the formation of a major player in the region. And in fact, as of this moment, Pakistan is already applying to be a dialogue partner of ASEAN, and it's under favorable consideration.
So you are satisfied with the role of ASEAN for peace and stability?
Yes, yes. In fact, Mr. Malik, ASEAN was founded in 1967. But I think it's to the credit of ASEAN that since 1967, there has been no war or conflict between the 10 nations of ASEAN. And that's a miracle. Because, all throughout history, these countries have been in conflict with each other. Starting with the Cold War and even in the ancient times. These were kingdoms which were actually constantly warring among themselves. They have their own territorial disputes. They have their own cultural disputes. They have been some of them have been historical enemies. Yes. But in spite of that, because of ASEAN, we were able to set up a dispute settlement mechanism which is peaceful, based on dialogue. And we don't have to use force or the threat of force. And I think that's the number one contribution of ASEAN to the region, to the peace of the region, but also to the peace of the world. And at the same time also, because of the coming together of ASEAN, we believe that economic development in the region, in Southeast Asia and in the individual ASEAN countries have been accelerated. Now that we have come up with a community, we're looking at the third objective, the coming up of a common ASEAN identity.
That's a commendable your achievement, I think.
Yeah.
Viewers, here we take a short commercial break, then we will continue our discussion. Thank you. Welcome back, viewers. Excellency, you have described in a detailed bilateral relation between the two countries, but my specific question is that what are the main areas that your investor from your country would like to invest in Pakistan? Can you explain those areas in Pakistan?
Okay, as I've said a moment ago, we are already very much involved in port development and port management, especially in Karachi. But that can expand, and that can upgrade. That's a good area of investments for the Philippines, especially for ICTSI. But at the same time also, as I have also said a moment ago, we are also very interested in power generation. We can help Pakistan in solving the current
energy crisis.
Yeah, by probably helping in independent power production and power generation, in which case we can provide you a model, the same model that we used in the Philippines in the 1990s. And certain Filipino companies can also help in setting up investments in Pakistan to help realize that model. And at the same time, we're also looking at textile and cotton. Yeah, the Philippines is a garment producing country, but we do not have cotton, and we do not produce textiles. But actually at this point, to tell you, Mr. Malik, in Manila, you already have, as a testament of our good bilateral economic relationship, there's a Philippine-Pakistani Chamber of Commerce. You might be surprised to hear about that.
Oh yes, it's very surprising.
Yeah, a very active Chamber of Commerce. The leader, the head, is particular my friend, Mr. Muhammad Islam. And they are very active in textiles. In fact, they are, I believe that some of their businesses are supplying most of the textile needs of most of the five-star hotels in the Philippines. So that's one area of very good cooperation. We can also invest in that industry in Pakistan.
In pharmaceutical and others as well, IT?
Pharmaceuticals also, and other areas, including auto parts. As I said a moment ago, in auto parts and machine parts. And then the largest export of the Philippines actually is in semiconductors. Yeah, we can explore investments in niche areas in Pakistan on that. And another area where we can invest is in food processing. Yeah, I have noticed that
it's a very
Pakistan,
potential area, isn't it?
It has a large potential in Pakistan.
Yes.
There are areas in Pakistan which are almost semi-tropical, and you're also producing a lot of fruits and nuts.
Because we are an agricultural country, yes.
Yeah, and most of these fruits and nuts quite array worldwide as health food, and the Philippines is also producing a lot of those, and investments in that area could be done. I think also one more area where we could invest in Pakistan is in terms of technical and vocational education.
It's very, very important, yes.
Because I've been participating in some of the fora that you've been holding in Pakistan, specifically the leadership conference that was held in Karachi around in January of this year. And it was pointed out there that there's a particular weakness in Pakistani education, especially in terms of technical vocational skills. And we need this very much. For a thriving economy, for a thriving industry, we have to have this special set of skills that will satisfy the demands of the industries. And the Philippines has had a very good experience in that regard, so much so that actually most of our overseas workers are highly skilled in technical vocational skills, aside from the professionals, of course, the engineers. So, we have more than 10 million people abroad and overseas workers.
10 million?
Yeah. And so their skills and the high demand for them is a testament to the quality of technical education that we're able to give in the Philippines. We can invest in that in Pakistan, and so we'll be able to help you in your own needs and your own demands for industrial skills.
So in this regard, can you tell us that did Government of Pakistan contacted with your government regarding this vocational training that you are mentioning?
There were some kind of feelers, but nothing definite has yet been forged on this one. But that's the good thing about it. It's a good area, potential area for a cooperation between our countries. But surely between our educational institutions, there's already an indication of interest for the Filipino technical and vocational offers.
And sir, how do you see the climate of investment?
Yeah, very important.
Investment climate in Pakistan.
Yes. Now,
do you satisfy with the measures taken by this government to facilitate the foreign investor in Pakistan?
Of course, we appreciate everything that's being done by your government to do that. Actually, you're going out of your way to satisfy the needs of foreign investors. But of course, as we very well know, more needs to be done. Well, the fact that almost half of the territory of Pakistan is at this point quite off limits to diplomats is already a testament to the fact that we may have some problems in these areas. The first thing that investors would have to think of when they invest in a country is risk management. So it's important that Pakistan is able to achieve peace and stability throughout the entire country for economy and investments to truly blossom. But within the areas which are very accessible to us, like Sindh, Punjab, even the Islamabad area, it's also important that there is what we call the rule of law. Now, the rule of law is not only important in the sense of fostering order, but to boost investor confidence.
Yes.
Yeah, especially in terms of dispute settlement mechanisms, because economic cooperation, investment partnership will not always be under ideal circumstances. There might be disputes along the way, major disputes, minor disputes, whatever, but you'll have to have a mechanism to resolve these disputes legally, with transparency, and to the satisfaction of all parties. There should be the sense of fairness that should come out of this.
Exactly.
So I think actually this is the very same thing that has been asked of me by one of the investors from the Philippines, who's trying to explore, car battery investments here in Pakistan. That's the first thing that they asked me about. How about the investment climate? How about the dispute settlement mechanisms? If I have a complaint, can I be satisfied by the courts? Could I be satisfied by the mechanisms for settling these disputes being run by the government? Things like that. And I think this is true in all countries, including my own country.
And sir, as Ambassador, how you describe the economic reforms introduced by this government? Do you think that economic revival program of this government will be successful as we have a potential and natural resources? But how do you think that Pakistan's economy will be booming in the future as well?
I think the plans that are being carried out, the programs and plans being carried out by the government are fantastic. I think the challenge would be in the implementation, especially at the grassroots. National governments can define the most wonderful of plans, but the ones who are going to carry this out are the local governments, down to the village level. And so it will depend, everything will depend on how well the processes and procedures are explained to the local level and how well they are able to execute them to the extent that the national government envisioned them to be.
Sir, as you know that law and order is a very, very crucial and very, very important for the foreign investment. How do you think that security situation is becoming better in Pakistan, as you mentioned early in your remarks? Do you think that this law and order will be very good in future as well?
Well, we are observing your operations in the Fatah region. We're also observing your operations in the different provinces. We have confidence that you are able to take care and manage these challenges in Pakistan. And that because of this, we're still able to carry out normal life in the cities. So economic activity goes on in spite of all of this. So I think you're making a lot of headway. We're making a lot of headway. Yeah, and I think that's the reason why most of the major countries still have their investments here in Pakistan, and many are even planning to expand such investments here. So I think you're doing well.
It's a clear reflection, I think. And sir, you have some Iceland issues with China. Can you explain it that you have some problem, Iceland issues that have not been settled so far?
Okay. Well, first of all, let me say that the Philippine bilateral relations with China is broad. It's very comprehensive. So the South China Sea issue does not encapsulate all of that relations. We have good economic relations with them. We have good socio-cultural relations with them. We even have good political relations with them. There are a lot of areas of cooperation between the Philippines and China in the international arena, including in the United Nations. Now, when it comes to the South China Sea, it's not only a bilateral issue between the Philippines and China. There are several countries around the South China Sea. You have Vietnam, Philippines, Malaysia, Brunei, even Indonesia, the southernmost tip. So now all of them are involved in the South China Sea issue. At least 4 of them have claims in the South China Sea. So it's more or less a multilateral issue. It will be very difficult to solve it just bilaterally, because at least in 1 or 2 points of South China Sea, you have at least 2 or 3 claimants. So I think the best way to solve this, it would be multilaterally. Now, let me say that I think the main thing there is the 9-dash line claim of China, which is, from the point of view of the other claimant states of Southeast Asia, is quite expansive. It's quite excessive. Actually at this point, there's no specific coordinates for the 9-dash line. So we don't even know where that actually extends to. The first thing about when you speak about claims, the first thing that should be clarified would be the coordinates. What are we talking about? What parts of a certain geographic or maritime area? No, we don't have that in the 9-dash line. The only thing that we know is that they are described by the claim as something that's already almost touching our territorial maritime boundaries. Now, the thing about it is that ever since ancient times, the maps of China have always indicated as its southernmost border the island of Hainan and the immediate waters around it. Even with the Qing dynasty, that was how it was defined. And the People's Republic of China inherited the borders of China as it was defined under the Qing dynasty. Now, the Nine Dutch Line is a problem for the other Southeast Asian nations because, you know, these other Southeast Asian nations are right smack in the South China Sea. Ever since the Neolithic times, it has been peopled with Southeast Asians. Ever since those days, the people of Southeast Asia have been fishing in those waters, have been in those waters, and have been navigating those waters. Actually, the different countries of Southeast Asia have been trading through those waters. So people from the Philippines have been trading with people from Vietnam, Malaysia, Indonesia, Brunei, even Thailand and Cambodia through those waters. So ever since time immemorial, we have been there. Now, we acknowledge that there are overlapping claims, but we believe that these claims could be settled peacefully. In fact, that's exactly the reason why the Philippines filed its case with the International Tribunal on the Law of the Sea, of the UNCLOS, the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. Because, especially for the Philippines, we believe in a peaceful settlement of that dispute. A peaceful and friendly settlement of that dispute. And we believe that since we are talking about a sea, we're talking about waters, what higher authority could be about that than the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea? Exactly. So there it is. Now, the first part of the first phase of our claim, of our case, was actually answered last October 29, last year, when UNCLOS said that it has jurisdiction over that case. Because before, there were others who were saying that UNCLOS does not have jurisdiction. Now it's clear they have jurisdiction. And we're now only waiting for the decision of UNCLOS on the salient features of our case. Now actually, we're not asking UNCLOS in that case to grant us anything. We're not there for our territorial boundaries. We're not asking them to set territorial boundaries. The kernel of the case is simply on the maritime entitlements of the features in the South China Sea. Because, you know, in the South China Sea, most of the features there are reefs, low tide elevations, rocks.
So you are hopeful for the peaceful settlement of this?
We're hopeful for the peaceful settlement of that dispute. And because of this, we would also like to encourage all the parties, when the verdict comes, to honor and carry out the verdict of UNCLOS.
Sir, what are the similarities or commonalities that we find between the two countries, Pakistan and Philippines?
Similarities? Well, as I've said before, first we can start with the economy. The economy is fairly similar. We are both strong on light industries. And we also have a lot of agricultural and food products. At the same time, well, of course, we have the common Asian heritage. And then both are friendly peoples, and both are very hospitable peoples. You know, especially here in Pakistan, I've heard that hospitality is a very strong thing, right? In the Philippines, the Filipino people are also very much known for their hospitality and friendliness to foreigners.
And sir, what is the literacy rate in your country and your economic indicator and your other achievement that you got as a country? How did you define your trade diplomacy, economic diplomacy, and your political relation with different countries of the world?
I think we have a very dynamic political and economic relations with the rest of the world. We are very active in the United Nations. We are very active in the UN, in the ASEAN, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. We are also active in the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation. We are active not only as a nation, but also as personnel in the different agencies of the United Nations and international, in the intergovernmental organizations, and even in the international NGOs. So that's on the political. But also at the same time, we have trade with almost all of the nations of the world. And of course, we have people all over the world. I guess we have one of the largest diaspora on the planet with 10 million Filipinos all over the planet. There's no country, I think, where we do not have a Filipino. Even in Nepal, we have a Filipino. Even in Timbuktu, in Africa, we have Filipinos. So even in Afghanistan, we have a lot of Filipinos.
So you have a representation in the whole part of the world.
Sort of. They may not exactly be resident ambassadors, but we have ambassadors accredited to most of the countries, to most of the members of the United Nations.
And so lastly, how do you see this CPEC between Pakistan and
Well,
India?
that will very much benefit the Pakistani people. The region needs a lot of infrastructure. In as much as this will connect China to Karachi, it will be useful not only to Pakistan, but also to Afghanistan and to Central Asia as an access to the sea. Now, it will also be useful as a part of the rail and road network from East Asia to hopefully to West Asia and to Europe. And so I think because of that, it will very much spur trade and investments in Pakistan. The infusion alone of the 40+ billion of Chinese investments in Pakistan is already such a huge contribution to your economy. But the more important thing would be the multiplier effect of that investment in terms of increased trade and increased investments in Pakistan, increased production in Pakistan, and employment, all those stuff. And I think it will also have some kind of a peace dividend. The more you are able to employ people, the more you are able to pull them away from the influence of militancy and extremism.
Sir, the last question, concluding, that any message that you want to give to the people of Pakistan as ambassador?
Well, I'm here to improve the relations between the people of the Philippines and Pakistan, and I only see optimism in the future. I mean, both our parties are doing their best to realize these better relations, but we also see that the Pakistani people is doing its best to better the political and economic situation in this country. Now, because of that, I think the future could only be optimistic. We will have challenges, definitely, but I think we will be able to hurdle all of these challenges. So probably I can encapsulate my aspirations in just 2 words. The usual greetings that we do in Pakistan. Pakistan Zindabad. So,
Yes.
Pakistan.
His Excellency the Ambassador of Philippines, Mr. Daniel, I am highly grateful to you for sparing your precious moment for our programs.
Thank you very much also, Mr. Malik. And thank you also for to Channel 5 and to the Cabrain group of newspapers.
Thank you very much, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure.
Great pleasure, sir. Thank you. Viewers, thank you very much. It's the end of the programs. Thank you, sir.